Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another version of the vlog. This here is Manny Raya, and I'm here today talking about the coronavirus and everything that's been going on surrounding it. I know there's been quite a bit of devastation and a lot of losses of life, which I absolutely give my condolences to everybody that's lost someone. But I believe that there are other things that we should be talking about as well as a society if we are to get better from this, if we are to learn from this, and if we are going to take this opportunity again to become better. As I look on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and my friends, I see that people are reacting to this pandemic in a number of different ways, right? There's people that are going out in nature and appreciating what it is that the world has to offer and keeping their distance from other people. I see that there's people that are working out, running at-home workout videos, right? I see that there's people that are binge watching series and kind of staying at home doing their due part, right? I see a lot of drinking going on. I see a lot of judging of others going on, people calling the police. I know that the Santa Maria Police Department had to ask the community to stop calling the police on their neighbors if they saw them walking on the street, right? It is something that you're allowed to do. We're not in full quarantine mode. We're not in full shutdown mode. You are allowed to walk your pets. You are allowed to go out for a walk yourself. So things are a little bit different than what some may perceive. And then I also see a lot of people working on their side hustles and educating themselves. I see a lot of people that have been doing online studies. I see a lot of people that are trying to develop and build up programs. We can look back at a previous recession where the economic system kind of went down and the things that came out of that, Airbnb, Uber, things of that nature, right? So there's people that take this opportunity or take something that is sad as an opportunity to move forward and prosper. Something that I've seen and I've noticed is that jobs that people once deemed low skilled or not something that is essential are actually coming out to be essential jobs, right? You see that right now we couldn't survive if we didn't have farmers doing their work, right? Store clerks being there and helping us out to that we can have our groceries and so that we can quarantine, right? Teachers, the role that teachers play now with parents homeschooling and having their kids in the house all the time, you're able to understand like what it is that a teacher actually does, what it is that the school system does, right? It's an educational system. It's also a counseling system. It's a safe space. It's a place where kids can go get their food where they may not be able to get food at home, right? There's so much that goes on at a school besides just basic one-on-one education or teacher to student education, right? And so we're able to see that. But that being said, these store clerks, these emergency workers, these nurses, these doctors, like they all have families too, right? They all have to protect themselves as well, right? But they're out there on the front lines doing their due diligence and making sure that America survives, right? But something that we have to question also is like, what is their struggle, right? Like if I'm a nurse and I'm called to go help out, but I know that daycare systems aren't working, I may be forced to leave my child at home, right? These are sacrifices that I make as an individual to help my society better. And we have to understand like these people are doing it to one to help, but also some people could be doing it just to make ends meet. But because without this work, they wouldn't be able to sustain in their home. They wouldn't be able to buy groceries. They wouldn't be able to do the things that some of us can do because we may have money saved up, right? Not everybody has that luxury. And so it's something that has to be brought to attention. Bringing these issues of these people's to attention, we have to also understand like, are they being treated appropriately? If you look at the local news in Pittsburgh, you'll see that sanitation workers, trash men and women have gone on strike because they don't have proper means to protect themselves from the coronavirus. If I'm picking up someone's trash and there's napkins and there's Kleenex and there's a number of different things that may put me at risk, like why am I not being taken care of? I'm doing work that is, again, essential to our survival, yet I don't have protective gear. Hospital workers don't have protective gear, right? We could look at New York and see how many hours these people are putting in and putting themselves at risk. They're not given the proper tools. I've heard nurses and doctors again on the news saying that like they feel that they're in a war zone, and though we're in a first world country, they feel like they're working in a third world country because of their lack of their protective gear, right? We could look at ordinary workers and how many of us have been laid off from our jobs, right? Why? Well, because the government is saying that they may suggest that these people offer us paid sick leave. Now, it's something that we don't have, but now it's something that we wish we actually did have, right? Paid sick leave is something that is essential to our survival. So we now start looking at these issues that are going on in society as far as healthcare. If I don't have insurance and I get coronavirus, what happens to me? If I can't work and I need that money to be able to sustain, what happens to me, right? These are basic fundamental things that we need in order for our survival. And where people were anti these things before, they may be pro these things now because they see that they need them. But people live like this at all times, right? Why is healthcare? Why is paid sick leave? Why are these things such a big issue? Like, where are we going to get the money from? Well, now we see where we get the money from, right? It's possible to do in this circumstance. But this is a circumstance that people face in general. So, like, why is this something that we can't talk about in a rational manner outside of a pandemic? Talking about looking at social issues in a different way, I myself have never weighed in on the Second Amendment, that is your right to bear arms, because I kind of go back and forth. Whether I believe you ought to be able to own a gun, but again, can I own an AR-15? Can I own a tank? I've always kind of been undecided about that. But now more than ever do I believe that your right to gun ownership is an essential right, not just because it's in it's in our Constitution, but because it is something that you need for self-protection. Right now, we see that in cities like Cincinnati, and again, look at the news. Go ahead and look at their local news. Go ahead and look at Time Magazine. Go ahead and look at Politico. Go ahead and look at credible sources that will show you this. We have police departments around the country saying that they're not going to respond to break-ins, to certain code violations, right? Because they're not going to put themselves in a position where they could get coronavirus, or because they have other things that they're dealing with. Well, who the fuck is going to protect and serve me if I don't have an ability to do that for myself? Right? That makes it so important that I am not a gun owner, but I wish I was, so that if something were to happen in my home, I'd be able to protect myself, so that I'd be able to not have to worry about people damaging me. I don't, again, believe that everyone is out to hurt me. I don't come from that line of thought. I'm not like a Hobbesian, but I do believe that we ought to be able to protect ourselves. And this has truly made me rethink that, right? It's an essential freedom, like a freedom of movement, right? Why I don't believe in the quarantine as having people locked down and not being able to go anywhere. Like, that takes away that basic freedom. And we see, as President Trump brought it up, you saw that Cuomo in New York's like, no, like, that's going to create mayhem. Like, you're blocking us from being able to bring in goods, to take out goods, and you're taking away people's freedoms. Like, people are going to go ape shit, right? Now we're able to see how these are basic things that we need in order to survive as a society. With this freedom of movement, I also find it weird that they're saying that, like, well, if you have a loved one in the hospital that's suffering from this, you may not be able to visit them. If you have a loved one that passes away, you may not be able to go to their funeral. Why not? Like, I, as an individual, have the freedom to do as I please, where I put myself in harm. If I get it, okay, then that's fine. That's on me, right? Now, I know that's not necessarily a popular train of thought, because some people are like, well, you're putting other people at risk. Well, I don't have to put other people at risk. I could quarantine myself and take myself out of that situation if I choose to go to my mother's or my father's or my son's funeral. Like, taking away people's freedoms for safety has never made sense to me and will never make sense to me. Now, going on to the government and their role in this, President Trump, I believe, has made egregious errors in the handling of this, in how it is that the government could have handled this, in taking out basic needs to hospitals right now as it is that they need them all throughout the country, in being petty in his relationships with governors and mayors of different municipalities. I believe that in wanting to open the business sector, he's more focused on economics than he is anything else. But I believe if you look at his track record, that's the way he is, right? That's what we're dealing with, and that's the president that the United States has put in command. But this notion that the economic sector has to be reopened is something that should come up for debate, but it's also something that should come up for debate as we see that this quote unquote stimulus package has been released, right? If it's about economics and it's about taking care of people, why not take care of the consumers? It seems that a big part of this bailout, or if this economic stimulus, is going towards places like airlines, right? Well, if airlines and corporations are seen as people, yet people don't get bailed out like this in a regular society because of the economic system in which we live in, which is capitalism, why is it the case that they get these bailouts, right? airlines, the car industry, the banks, right? Insurance companies, right? How much money do insurance companies I don't have insurance. I don't know if you have insurance, but it's quite difficult to get insurance. Why? Because their premiums are so high, because they're completely out of whack. So we're going to give them a bailout to be able to sustain themselves, which is not something that we would do for the average American. So it doesn't really click to me, right? It doesn't make sense. If corporations are people, then ought we not give them the same benefits and the same wherewithal that we do people themselves? We don't treat people in this manner, yet we give these corporations such great leeway to be able to fail, and then we just dig them out, right? As an individual, if I fail, you're not going to dig me out, right? Because you're anti-socialism, right? You got to deal with that for your own, man. We're independent peoples. Well, where does this come in for corporations? Where does this come in for the rich, right? It seems like we have a notion of socialism for the rich and individualism for the poor, and that doesn't make sense to me. Finally, like in this bill, they were able to give $1,200 to Americans for the most part. And you may be thinking, like, what the hell am I going to do with $1,200 in a month? You want to know how they got that number? 7.5 times 40. Multiply that by 4. That's $1,200. That is a minimum wage living, right? So those of you that argue for not raising the minimum wage, that a minimum wage is enough to be sustainable, that with a minimum wage you're able to do all of these things, now you see what a minimum wage is able to afford you, and that's not very much, right? We have all of these issues that we're dealing with right now, and that now we're going to help people because we're in a crisis. We're in an economic crisis. We're in a pandemic crisis. But this isn't the first time that people are suffering this. People suffer from a lack of work. People suffer from a lack of health care. People suffer from a lack of a number of different things that a social safety net would be able to help them with and advance our society. Yet we fight tooth and nail to not create these type of social systems that it boggles my mind that now everyone's like, yeah, gun-ho about it, where we could have done this in the first place. Rant over. So where do I end this with? I would say to do your due diligence. Look at multiple news sources. Look at what's going on in society, and think about how it is that you can better yourself and how it is that you can better your community. Be wary of social media. There's so much news and propaganda that's going on, and as a country, we're so divided on science and facts and what is true and what is not true that we need to be able to clear and filter those things as they come up, and stay away from those. Sometimes stay away from social media and just have time to yourself so that you're able to take care of yourself mentally and physically, right? We understand that this pandemic is going to get worse before it gets better. And a lot of us, if not most of us, are going to get the coronavirus. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is extend the curve so that it doesn't have a sharp uptick and everybody's in the hospital at the same time, right? Like that's what they're looking out in the healthcare system. According to Time Magazine, the goal is to avoid a sharp, concentrated uptick in cases that exceeds the capacity of the healthcare system in favor of a lengthier outbreak that stays within the bounds of what the system can handle, resulting in fewer people getting sick and dying overall. This is what experts call flattening the curve. That is what we're trying to do, right? Understanding that people are going to be affected by this unless a vaccine comes out immediately. So how is it that we can get those people that are sick to get sick over a period of time that the hospital is able to maintain them? Right? Flattening the curve is us working together for a common good, for the common good of our society, for the common good of our country, for the common good of the world as a whole, right? But so are healthcare rights. So is your right to gun ownership. So is your right to paid work leave. So is your right to a decent minimum wage. So is your basic right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, this ability to move freely throughout the world, throughout your own state, throughout your own country, right? This is what we're fighting for. And I hope that this is where we end up, with the recognition that we need each other, that we depend on each other, and that we ought to look out for our neighbor, because our neighbor depends on us just like we depend on our neighbor. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this vlog, and I'll catch you soon. One love.